Perhaps Democrats will surprise a lot of folks and do historically well come next Tuesday.
With the U.S. election less than a week away, there is reason to be at least a little optimistic for Kamala Harris's chances. Now, I want to be clear. The stuff I'm going to show you here, this clip from CNN, this does not mean Harris is winning the election. This is not a prediction. I am just showcasing that despite all of the worry, for good reason, there is also reason to be optimistic. Here is Harry Enton, CNN's data guy, breaking down some positive numbers for Harris. This is separate from polling state by state, just generally an overview of how Harris looks in certain numbers and how that compares to past elections and what that can mean for her in this one.
Harris, simply put, is more popular than Donald Trump. Her net favorable rating is higher than Trump. She's at -2. Trump's at -7. I went all the way back since 1956 and looked at the polls. Does the more popular candidate usually win? The answer is absolutely yes. 16 times the more popular candidate has won. Only one time the less popular candidate has won. I will note that was Donald Trump back in 2016. But of course, remember, Hillary Clinton was quite unpopular herself. But the bottom line is this. Kamala Harris has been consistently more popular in the polls than Donald Trump is. She's consistently had a higher net favorable rating than Donald Trump. And normally, usually, the candidate who's more popular goes on to win on Election Day.
Democrats are fond of that saying, forget the polls, when we vote, we win.
Yes.
And you see something in that.
Absolutely. Let's take a look at the special elections, right? Democrats in special elections, their performances the last 2 years. What has happened? We're looking at state legislative and federal special elections. On average, these Democrats have surpassed Joe Biden's 2020 margin by 2 points. By 2 points. And remember, Joe Biden won. So the fact that these Democrats have been doing better than Joe Biden's been doing is a good sign. Historically speaking, there is correlation between how folks do in the special elections, especially in this polarized era, and how folks do eventually in the presidential election. It was actually one of the warning signs last time around in 2020, where Democrats really weren't doing that great in special elections, despite the polls saying that Joe Biden was going to win rather easily. It suggested Trump would do better on Election Day. This time around, the special elections are suggesting the opposite, that in fact Joe Biden, because Democrats have been exceeding Joe Biden's margin, that maybe Democrats will actually do better than the polls have been indicating.
Well, there you have it. Kamala Harris landslide with 493 electoral college votes is not going to happen. But can you imagine? Okay, let's be clear. This is not happening. They also have this is Newsweek. They also have what a Trump landslide could look like, where they have him even winning states like New York. All right. These are insane scenarios, apparently based on 538 numbers of the extremes on both ends. I just, the idea that this would ever happen is wild. The idea that this would ever happen is wild. Not happening. But those numbers there are positive, and I have another clip to get to from him in a second. But favorability is a major one. I know 2016, that was Trump, and he outdid that and ended up winning anyways. But again, as Harry Enton mentioned there, Hillary Clinton was very unpopular. Kamala Harris is nowhere near the unpopularity or unfavorability that Hillary Clinton was back in 2016. That said, of course, this is not a prediction of, an election victory for Harris. It's just showcasing that there are numbers outside of just the polling state by state or national polling that do look good for Harris, historically speaking. Last clip here from CNN.
But what about the two factors?
Yeah.
One, the right track, wrong track. Country, so few people think the country is going on the right track right now.
Yeah.
And also something you pointed out yesterday as a factor, which is Biden's bad approval rating.
Yeah. So yesterday I pointed out that very few people think the country is going on the right track. Very few people approve of Joe Biden's approval rating. You can see it right here. In 2024, it's just 28% who say the country's on the right track. 40% approve of Joe Biden's job. But remember, in 2022, these metrics look awfully similar. In fact, slightly less believe the country was on the right track, slightly more approved of Joe Biden's job, but very similar numbers here. And remember, even though the top metrics were bad for Democrats in 2022, the White House party did historically well in that midterm. So the bottom line is, Kate, a lot of Democrats believe when voters vote, they win. And with abortion being a much bigger issue this time around than historically speaking when it was in 2022, Democrats did historically well. Perhaps Democrats will surprise a lot of folks and do historically well come next Tuesday.
I do think abortion rights is still the most motivating factor for this election. We're going to have to see if that is able to outpace the growth that Trump has seen. which is wild that a convicted felon is growing in support year over year, but here we are. Uh, a breakdown here, though, just quickly over some national polling and state by state of some of the swing states. So 538, they have weighted averages. That's why I prefer to share their numbers. But Harris up nationally by 1.3 nationally. Pennsylvania, Trump right now eking out a above Harris by 0.4. Wisconsin, Harris up by 0.7. Michigan, Harris up by 1 point. Nevada, Harris up by 0.1. This election's insanely close. North Carolina, Trump up by 1.1. Which, by the way, worth mentioning, North Carolina, from what I'm reading, will be the state to look at come election day. If this state flips for Harris, it's unlikely that Trump is going to win the election. So that could be sort of the canary in the coal mine for the Trump campaign. But Georgia, Trump up by 1.8, and Arizona, Trump up by 2.2, which, based on just my read, the amount of work Harris has attempted to do to try and appeal to Republican moderates, you would think that would pay off a lot in a state like Arizona, the John McCain state, and it hasn't really, at least based on this. I still tend to think that was a mistake, but whatever, too late now. Let's see where this all goes. It's less than a week away. For the sake of the world, please, people, go out and vote and ensure Donald Trump loses.